Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the latest clone system from a company called Analogue. This is the Analogue Duo, and this was a total surprise to a lot of us when this was originally announced, because essentially what this is, it's a modern remake or clone system designed to play a bunch of systems, specifically the TurboGrafx-16, the PC Engine, the Super Graphics, TurboGrafx CD, the PC Engine CD-ROM, as well as the Super Arcade CD-ROM. And like I said, I don't think anybody saw this coming, because in the past, Analogue has covered more mainstream systems like the original NES, the Super NES, the Sega Genesis, things like that. And for the most part, Analogue clone systems are kind of the gold standard of what you can do with FPGA technology, and essentially making these systems the most compatible with the least amount of lag and really compromise. And so I was really happy that they sent me a review unit, because I do have an original TurboGrafx-16 as well as a CD add-on and a bunch of games to try out on it. And to help me out with this review, I reached out to my nephew Will and his fiance Nicole. The cool thing is they have never used one of these before. I don't even know if they've seen one before. And so for them, this was all brand new, and it was really fun to get their feedback. And the truth is, the TurboGrafx-16 wasn't really that popular in the US. I mean, I knew one guy who had one back in the 90s, and he was the only one. And you know, I didn't even hear about the PC Engine side of things. That's what it was called in Japan, where it was definitely more popular, but this is a pretty niche console here. Let's go ahead and walk around the unit, and starting with the front, you can see it is very sleek. There are two colors to choose from, either black or white, and I chose the white one because it looks very like, I don't know, prototype Apple design or something. It looks really cool. On the left there is the power button, and you have two slots. That's because this game supports two different media types. You have the TurboGrafx style hue cards, so those are those credit card looking things. That's the majority of the games that you play on it. And then you also have a CD-ROM. And I believe this is the first time that Analogue has done a console with a CD-ROM drive, and so that could explain a little bit more about the price. Normally, their consoles are about $200. This one is actually $250. On the side of it is where you'll see a port where you can plug in an original style PC Engine controller, so a wired controller if you happen to have one. But I think a lot of people are just going to use those 8BitDo wireless controllers, because this does support Bluetooth or 2.4G connections, so very little lag if you want it on the wireless controller. You've also got a headphone jack as well as a volume control, and then there's the button that you use to pair up to 4 wireless controllers. And then on the back is where you plug in your USB-C power connection. Right there are the two USB ports, so you can have 2 wired USB controllers if you wish. There is your HDMI out, and this will output the video at 1080p. And then finally you have an SD card slot, which eventually this will support save states. It doesn't have them right now at launch, but according to the manual, it says that they're coming soon. Let's go ahead and turn it on and check out the operating system. Now this is going to look very familiar to anybody who bought the Analogue Pocket. I believe it's running a version of that custom OS. One of the neat features of the operating system is the library. So every time you put a game into the system, it detects it, it puts up its cover art, and it tells you a little information about it and also how much time you put in playing it. I should also be clear that this is a region-free device, so not only can you play all those North American releases, but you can also then dive into import games from Japan, of which there are a bunch of PC Engine games released that frankly we never got, but this will play. As far as display modes, you can go anywhere from 480p to 1080p, and you can toggle whether you want that to be 50 Hz or 60 Hz. As you might expect, this does support scan lines, but in a very analog kind of way. Again, it reminds me almost of their Pocket, because when you go in here, you're not really choosing scan lines directly. What you're choosing is the type of retro style display, essentially. So you see it here. The default will be the Analogue TurboGrafx-16. Essentially, that's just a very clean, non-filtered display. But then you can choose a CRT filter. So that's trying to emulate, what a television would look like. But then you can go in here and choose the Turbo Express. So that's the portable handheld version of the TurboGrafx-16 that was released. So again, if you're looking for kind of like a handheld, really retro looking display, you can choose that. As well as the PC Engine LT, which was this really wild laptop device that was put out back in 1991. For me personally, I'm going to use the clean look for most of this video, but be aware that you do have options here. Now let's go ahead and check out the audio. We're going to start with a real TurboGrafx-16. And then here is the Analogue Duo. Here is an original CD game, and it's got a little bit of digital audio. Now here's the exact same CD-based game running on the Analogue Duo. To my ears, they sound very similar, although I do notice that the Analogue is probably half as loud for some reason. But as far as the audio, I do think that they sound pretty close, don't you? But keep in mind that there are hundreds of games for these systems, and I've only got a handful to test. And then basically for the past week, we have been playing games on this. And I gotta tell you that one of the really fun things about the TurboGrafx-16 and specifically even the PC Engine is that for a lot of people, this is all new territory, right? As I mentioned, these systems weren't that popular, especially in North America. And so for a lot of people, you're playing these games for the very first time. It was really fun sitting Will and Nicole down, who are, younger than I am, and putting the controller in their hand and just letting them experience this stuff for the first time. And you could see them having a lot of fun with this. These systems are really known for two types of games. The first one being 2D platforming games, of course, because we're coming at the end of the 80s and into the early 90s, and that was all the rage. And there are a bunch of them on this system. It was funny because Nicole is a massive Super Nintendo fan. That was the first system that she ever had growing up, and so she loves those games. But it was fun for her to come and experience some of these that she had never played before. But the other type of game that these systems are most known for are shooters. There are a ton of shooters on the TurboGrafx-16 and the PC Engine, and they're mostly, almost all of them, are highly regarded even today. In many ways, this era was the pinnacle of those 16-bit arcade-style shooting games. And so the TurboGrafx-16 and especially the PC Engine just got a ton of them. And thankfully, I've had a bunch of these in my game collection for a while. And as you can imagine, playing those games, you do not want any lag or as little lag as possible between the controller and the screen. And I have to say, this feels really good. Now, one particular bummer about this is that it doesn't, out of the box, support the EverDrive, at least not the version of it that I have. And so I was kind of bummed because I do use the EverDrive a lot, especially on my real hardware, because so many of these games are kind of hard to find, or they're, Japanese imports and can be kind of expensive. And so I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't use the EverDrive because that little slot in the front there, just doesn't support it. It's not tall enough to fit an EverDrive in there. Again, it's not their fault. Obviously, they just never considered it. Now, I assume that if I was to pop off the top of this thing, that could probably get around that issue, but I haven't personally tried it. But just be aware, I think you're gonna have to own the actual games to play on this, unless I'm missing something. And that's the other thing too to know about the TurboGrafx-16 and the PC Engine. If you're gonna dive into collecting for that and playing games, it can be really hard to find those in the wild. I'm telling you, in Seattle here, we've got a bunch of gaming stores. I went around this week to try to kind of fill out my game collection a little bit, and it was tough. These games, I don't think, are traded in very often to retro gaming stores, and when they are gone. So just be aware. It may not be that way in your town or where you live, but in general, PC Engine games and TurboGrafx-16 games are kind of hard to come by. And for the most part, everything I threw at it worked really well. Now, again, I don't have a massive collection here. There could be specific games here or there, maybe on CD-ROM, that would have some issue with this. I didn't run into that. However, I did have one game that did act kind of weird. I have a copy of New Adventure Island on a Hue card, and for whatever reason, when I first popped this into the system, it wouldn't detect it. Now, you know, this is a physical card here, physical game, so I thought it might be dirty, cleaned it off, and no go. Now, I popped it into my original TurboGrafx-16, and as you see here, it works just fine. So I powered off the analog system, rebooted it essentially, plugged it in, and as you can see, then it detected it. Not entirely sure what was going on here. It actually flickered a little bit. It actually went from detecting it to not detecting it, and then detecting it, and then it played the game. And then I couldn't get it to do it again. So again, I don't know if it's maybe my game, you know, or if there's something weird about the system. Maybe it's a little bit temperamental. I'm not entirely sure, but I wanted to mention it because, again, when you're playing physical games here, I suspect you could eventually run into this. So I'll be curious to see if any other people who are reviewing this also ran into that issue. Maybe it's this specific game, I'm not entirely sure, but it's the only one that actually gave me that trouble. And so overall, I'm actually really happy with the Analogue Duo. You know, this is yet another home run for them. They consistently put out really high quality clone systems. They're some of the best that you can get. They're also some of the most expensive ones that you can get as well. But you know, you kind of get what you pay for here. And I think at this point, I think most people who would, you know, consider buying this, they know what they're getting into. Who is this for? Well, you know, honestly, it's going to be for gamers and collectors who already have a decent size TurboGrafx-16 and PC Engine collection, which admittedly is fairly niche, right? Especially here in North America. But the goal of this device, and really every analog release, has been to perfectly preserve those old systems and just kind of bring them up to modern standards and make sure that gamers can enjoy them for years to come. So that's what this does. And because it doesn't support the EverDrive out of the box, it's kind of lit a fire under my butt to get out there and build up my TurboGrafx-16 and PC Engine collection a bit. But I would love to know what you think. Are you considering picking up an Analogue Duo, or you'll stick to other ways of playing TurboGrafx-16 games? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Also, thanks to Will and Nicole for helping me on this video, and take care.